The United States Navy and the Chinese PLAN are the two most powerful fleets on the planet. Yet both are building frigates that violate the classic definition of the job. America is building the Constellation-class, a 7,000-ton ship that was sold as cheap and simple. China is building the Type 054B, a 6,000-ton ship that was expected to keep up with carriers. One navy gave its frigate too much power. The other deliberately gave its frigate too little, and both decisions trace back to the engine room. Look at the Chinese choice first, because it is the most shocking. The Type 054B does not use a single gas turbine. It uses 4 CS-16 V-27 marine diesels in a CODAD arrangement, producing a combined 29.1 megawatts or about 39,000 horsepower. That is the same total power a single American LM-2500 turbine makes, split across 4 smaller engines. That conservative setup limits the 054B to just 27 to 28 knots, which is why it was seen falling behind the Fujian carrier during last month's sprint drills. China knew this would happen and accepted it. Compare that to the American philosophy, which is the exact opposite mistake. The Constellation was designed around a single large gas turbine and electric drive, just to guarantee it could sprint past 30 knots with a carrier. That obsession with top speed forced the hull to grow far beyond the original European design. The US Navy bought speed it rarely uses, while China bought endurance it cannot afford to lose in a carrier fight. So what happens if we fix the 054B the American way and give it one QC-280 gas turbine plus 2 diesels? Total power would jump from 29.1 megawatts to about 42.5 megawatts, and top speed would climb to 31 or 32 knots. On paper, the frigate finally keeps up with its carrier. In reality, you must cut 3 times larger air intakes, redesign the superstructure, and destroy the ship's stealth shaping. And you must engineer a massive reduction gearbox to marry turbine and diesel power, the same complexity that crippled the American LCS program. You would also burn 20% more fuel at patrol speed. China would gain a sprint it does not need and lose the 5,000-mile range it was built for. Redesigning that deeply would require a new class, probably a Type 054C, and for now the PLAN appears perfectly happy with the 4 diesel 054B. The American answer to the frigate problem could not be more different from China 4 diesels. The Constellation-class was designed around a single General Electric LM-2500 plus G4 gas turbine, paired with electric propulsion motors in a complex CODAD arrangement. That one turbine alone produces more than 32 megawatts, which is more power than all 4 Chinese diesels combined. The Navy demanded this setup because every U.S. escort must be able to sprint above 30 knots to keep pace with a nuclear carrier. That single requirement forced designers to add larger intakes, heavier gearboxes, and more cooling, which pushed displacement past 7,200 tons. The irony is that all that power did not buy more combat capability. To accommodate the turbine and even the downsized radar, the ANSPY-6V-3 EASR, the lead ship is now estimated around $1.28 billion, with the Congressional Budget Office warning costs could hit $1.6 billion, while follow-on hulls are targeted at $800 to $950 million, yet it still carries only 32 vertical launch cells. For comparison, the much smaller and cheaper Type 054B carries a similar air defense load while burning a fraction of the fuel at cruise. The U.S. Navy essentially built a destroyer hull, called it a frigate, and then limited it to frigate-level weapons. It is the mirror image of China choice, too much ship for too little firepower. When you place these 2 ships side by side, the trade-off becomes obvious, and it has nothing to do with engineering talent. China defined a frigate as a cheap, long-endurance submarine hunter, so it accepted 4 diesels, and 28 knots is good enough. America defined a frigate as a miniaturized destroyer, so it demanded a gas turbine and 30+ knots at any cost. Neither Navy actually built a balanced frigate in the classic sense, a fast enough, well-armed, affordable escort. One optimized for range and sacrificed the carrier sprint, the other optimized for speed and sacrificed the budget. This is why the world #1 navies cannot build a frigate right, because their doctrines will not let them. The PLAN does not need the 054B to sprint, because its Type 052D destroyers and Type 055 cruisers already provide the high-speed air defense screen. The U.S. Navy does need the speed because it has too few destroyers and expects every frigate to fill that gap. If Beijing ever truly wants a carrier frigate, it will not modify the 054B, it will design the rumored Type 054C with a proper CODAD plant. Until those strategic assumptions change, China will keep building efficient diesel frigates it is happy with, and America will keep gold-plating frigates until they become unaffordable. Third path belongs to Europe, and it exposes a lie both superpowers tell themselves. The original Italian FREMM that the US copied for the Constellation weighed 6,700 tons and made 30 knots with a single turbine. The US version now hits 7,200 tons, a 9% increase. The extra weight came from American survivability standards, stronger hull, more armor, redundant systems, but the result is the same. A frigate that costs like a destroyer and fights like a frigate. Now look at stealth. A gas turbine, LM 2500, exhausts at 500 degrees Celsius. A marine diesel, CS16 V27, runs at 300 degrees Celsius. At cruise speed, the Chinese 054B is actually cooler than the Constellation in infrared. What the diesel sacrifices is acoustic stealth, low-frequency noise that submarines hear from miles away. So the trade-off is real. China chose quiet heat but noisy engines. America chose hot exhaust but quieter screws. Neither is universally better. The export market decides who wins. China older Type 054A, cheap, simple diesel, has sold to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Thailand. The newer 054B is too expensive and too specialized. America Constellation cannot find a buyer, not because Aegis is classified, because export versions exist too, but because the lead ship costs $1.28 billion, and follow-ons are still $800 million. That is more than most countries' entire Navy budget. So the winners are Europe and South Korea, FREMM and Daegu class. Balanced frigates that are fast enough, cheap enough, and stealthy enough for real wars. Classic frigate is not dead. It just does not live in Washington or Beijing anymore. It lives in Paris, Seoul, Ankara, and Jakarta. Those navies still build 5,000 to 6,000 ton escorts with a single turbine, 2 diesels, 16 to 32 volts LS cells, and a price tag under $600 million. That is the real frigate. What the US and China built are something else, a mini destroyer and a long-range patrol ship. Does that mean they failed? No. It means they answered different questions. The US asked, how do we protect a carrier with no destroyers left? The answer, Constellation. China asked, how do we hunt submarines for 5,000 miles without refueling? The answer, 054B. Neither ship is wrong. Neither is a frigate. So stop complaining that the world #1 navies cannot build a frigate right. They can. They just chose not to. And until their doctrines change, until the US builds more destroyers or China builds more carriers, they will keep making the same mistake on purpose. That is not incompetence. That is strategy.